welcome back to Bikes and Laces, where today we are bringing you our Bikes and Laces 2022 wrapped.
So from our perspective, it's been kind of a strange year. You know, we've done a bit of everything and some things that we haven't actually done before. I think mainly because this was the first year out of COVID. You know, we didn't have any lockdowns, no races were cancelled, at least not because of COVID related issues.
Yeah.
So I think we're just going to jump straight in back at the beginning of the year in January.
Yeah. So right back at the beginning of the year, January, I did my usual kind of red January movement. It's something I've done for a couple of years now, and it's just a good way to kind of get moving throughout the year. We also had quite a bit of duathlon training set for both of us whilst I was still being coached, just to get us ready for the upcoming races. And then of course we had the National Running Show, which I've been to for the last few years actually.
Yeah, so this is my first year being coached. First full year being coached. So we had 2 duathlons set for February. My coach set us lots of sort of specific trainings. I think either him or some of his other athletes have done the same race that we've done, and he basically almost broke down for me the bike course. That there's a hill in it, there's bits where the power comes off, power goes on, and set up some training sessions that I completed on Zwift, and then some ones that I also completed outside. And like I said, yeah, those races were in February. The first one was at Ashridge House, which unfortunately, like the week before, I'd been quite ill, and we wanted to do it because it's one of our favourite locations to race. You completed the first run.
Yeah.
I had 2 laps to do on the bike, and I came in after the first lap, which I completed really quite slowly in terms of other times I've done it before. And the weather was horrendous, actually.
Yeah.
I remember it being really windy, and it was properly raining, and there was a bit where I was catching up with other cyclists, and I was thinking, we're going quite fast on this bit, and I am catching them and overtaking them round sort of weavy and windy country roads, and I was thinking, shall I back the power off first, because in case I need to brake or anything. I thought actually it'd probably be best to go fast, because if I do come off here, I'd rather be going fast than slow. Because I hadn't done much. I'd only started riding again on the road in December after breaking my collarbone the previous autumn. So I pulled out after the first lap, and we went home. But it was the first race back since COVID, and we had Portsmouth and the Portsmouth series coming the next weekend, actually.
Yeah, so we had quite a bit stacked against us for Ashridge, and it was good to slowly kind of get us back into it. But then Portsmouth, obviously, we also had in February, and that was the first of 3 Portsmouth races. So it was the shorter distance runs for me. And generally, kind of, it went really well. It was good to get back down there. It is a bit of a long drive, which does make it. It's not that it's not accessible. It just takes a lot of your day up. But all in all, it's a really good event, and we've really enjoyed it. So it was really good to get back to that in February, and then again in March. Actually, it saw us do the second Portsmouth race.
Yeah, I just remember Portsmouth, because it's on the seafront. You sort of run, it's almost like an out and back each time. You run out to a turnaround point and run back, and it's not too bad on the run. On the cycle, I don't think I spent any time on the aero bars, because it was so windy. I was having to sort of alter my hand positions on either side, so I was not balanced directly onto the bike just to keep it upright with the crosswinds that's coming off the English Channel right into me. But it is one of my favourite courses. The problem is that I think there is 18 pedestrian crossings on the course, and you can see that not only are the strongest athletes back from the first run and onto the bike first, but there's fewer footfall traffic.
Yeah.
So they're not having to stop at places like this. I mean, I got caught behind a bin lorry. I got caught at lights before, and then people have started to come into the town as you're doing your final laps, which is when you really don't want it to hinder your ride. But I mean, it can affect anyone. It does affect anyone, and it's just something you have to deal with whilst racing on open roads.
Mm-hmm.
One thing where you don't have to deal with that is on Zwift. I mentioned there were no lockdowns or anything this year. I was still doing some meetups with pro riders on Zwift. They were sort of, their pre-season or early season. Some were doing rehab, and it was great just to sort of be out riding with them, just chatting with them on Zwift rides. I think that's kind of a hangover from the lockdown.
Yeah.
Because you don't see it as much now outside of sort of team sponsorship, organised races.
Yeah.
It was just fun to do. But in April, got to ride outside a bit more. The weather was nicer, earlier mornings, longer days. Just meant I could sort of ride around. I didn't have just to wait for the weekends to get outside and ride in the light and with low traffic. Early mornings are perfect for that sort of thing.
Yeah, April saw a bit of an increase in my training as well. So I started trialling some commuting to and from work on the bike and starting to try and really get used to using Ratchet a bit more. She's not as comfortable for me as Elsa because she's a little bit longer, but she is an alright commuter bike. So I spent a bit of time getting used to Ratchet, and yeah, I did also increase my training because it wasn't going to be that long until I came up to my first big solo race of the year, which is a race that I do a lot of, and that rolled around in May. So yeah, April's kind of the point where I think we both started to get out a bit more and increase the training a bit more. And I think it was also in and around this time period that I actually dropped the coaching and I just started going a bit more solo on my training.
So when May came round, I started doing a lot more gravel riding. I bought a bike that I could do gravel on a few years ago now. It was basically a commuter bike that I made into a cyclocross bike and then into a gravel bike. And I was enjoying gravel riding so much. It was a great thing to do before work because I can get out and do a loop in about 45 minutes to an hour, which is perfect before work. I bought myself a gravel bike I wanted for about 2 years. It was on sale. And I just fell in love with gravel riding. It's great. I can mix up riding on the roads and riding off road with it in the same ride. So even if I needed to be home quickly, I could be. Then turning back to the road, we were lucky enough to get to see the last stage of the Women's Ride London. We went down just to see it on the day. Like I always do. We got down there early, walked through all the cars and the team buses, watched the race, and I think we got to chat to a couple of them after the race, especially the girls from La Carl Wahoo. And I think we're gonna go down next year as well and see the race.
Yeah, that's definitely the plan. So April for me saw me coming into my first big solo race. This is something that I do every year, and I went in for my 4th full Tough Mudder. Now I've been to Tough Mudder 5 times because I've done a half. But yeah, I went in for my 4th headband. It's just kind of become a bit of a tradition, really, that I have the weekend away, I go play in the mud, meet new people, and take on ridiculous obstacles that I know I'm definitely not strong enough to actually take on, but I'll still go and give them a good go. So it was really good to go and get down there again and go and see some familiar places, take on some big hills, and I think that did offer up a nice bit of training for the plans that would come later on in the year. Rolling round to June, this was, well, we got a lot more sunlight, we definitely got out a lot more, but we also had our first holiday abroad as a family, really, and the place we ended up going, one of the big things I did was a lot more kind of alternative training, trying a lot of things that I've done before, and just kind of really enjoying mixing it up a bit.
Yeah, they had a lot of the place we went had a lot of like sort of gym classes and offered bike rides, mountain and road, which I think we would have done anyway.
Yeah.
I think I looked at when my parents said, you know, they want to take us to this place they've been for like a couple of years in a row. I looked at bike hire straight away.
Yeah.
And they said, no, like they do organised rides and things like that. I mean, this was a holiday rather than, I mean, a training camp. We'd like to do it, but yeah. So we did the first holiday, and then we had quite a busy June because we had that. We had the last stage of the women's tour, which came to us, which was only a few weeks after Ride London. Again, when went through all the buses and stuff, you know, the start and finish were quite close to each other, so we managed to stop a couple of times on the route to see them go past.
Yeah.
We'd also picked up the amount of training again. You know, with some of the longer days, we can fit it in around work more easier. And then we also went to the Tumble in South Wales. Again, that place is a bit of a drive to get to, but it is our closest mountain, because we don't have much in the way of. We have a few short hills, but nothing that's a couple of kilometres long. We can really get some training in. That's where I first found out that the limitations of rim brakes. I took a very rural road down off the mountain. Brakes were screaming all the time, weren't slowing me down as much as I'd hoped. So that was a bit sketchy. Especially considering if I come off, I'm the only one of us who drives.
Yeah. It's
a 2.5 hour drive back. So then I thought, right, I'm going to get, especially hopefully for Brutal coming up later in the year, but definitely for some of the races next year, which involve a lot of climbing and descending, I definitely want disc brakes. So I began looking into road bikes with disc brakes, which my gravel and my time trial bike both had. So I sort of knew what I was getting into. To my gravel, July, getting into some longer gravel rides. Just did the Greenbelt loop, which I wore. I went the first 5k with her with my gravel bike, and then as she went off to do the rest of it, I then did a long gravel ride and met her back up late in the day.
Yeah, so the Greenbelt Loop was part of one of my 30 adventures before I turned 30, and the plan was to aim to do the whole route within a day. It was also we had quite a lot of really hot days this year,
yeah,
and that was one of them. So I asked Chris to come with me for the first bit because I was leaving at a time that I was going through a lot of wooded areas. It was still going to be darkish, so I just wanted a little bit of extra safety, and the plan was he would have met me right at the end as well. But I called it about a quarter of the way round. I managed to get a decent way through, really just enjoyed it. It was just good to get out and do a bit of hiking again. So I didn't complete the whole thing, but it has meant that I can now break it down into a further kind of 3 goes and then just complete it in like little quarterly challenges and hopefully bring some more of the scenes next year.
Yeah, so I mean, we definitely had hot weather, which I think helped me complete 200 kilometre ride, getting in training for the Brutal. I actually found it really easy. It wasn't the hilliest of rides, like I said, we don't have many hills around here.
No.
And I really enjoyed the fact that I got it done before lunch. I had to start early. Not so early that I needed lights. I rode 100k solo, met up with my dad, we did another 100k to finish off with. And I felt surprisingly okay after it. Now at the end of the month, and going into August, Birmingham hosted the Commonwealth Games, and Birmingham's not that far from us. Only about an hour and a bit in the car. We first went up to see the marathon, and then middle of next week we saw the time trial in Wolverhampton.
Yeah.
And then we had a weekend in Warwick for the road race, which was really good fun. It was a laps course, so we got to see the men and the women riders several times. And again, you know, it's still in summer, so when we weren't watching racing, we got to do it ourselves before and after work. And I enjoyed, because the longer days I'd get up really early, go out solo on the bike, and then pick Jess up about 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
And we'd go out for another ride after that, because you were looking at doing a lot more riding as part of your 30 adventures.
Yeah, so throwing us then through to August, I think one of the biggest things for me, adventure-wise, it was the last adventure of the series I was doing, but it was also the biggest cycling amount I'd done to date. So we went bike packing for my 30th, which saw me tick off about 125 kilometres on the day, and then cycled a little bit back home. We had it all kitted up with everything we needed, the tent. That was another really, really hot day.
That was a really hot day.
I mean, I definitely think I hydrated a bit better than you did, because I think you suffered a bit more in the evening. But despite a lot of the discomfort and the pain, bearing in mind I hadn't cycled much more than about 10 miles prior to this, leading up to the
Yeah, it was a bit concerning when we stopped for breakfast and your phone or your watch said, congratulations on completing your longest cycle yet.
Yeah.
And I thought, okay, we're a quarter of the way through this.
Yeah, so I mean, I hit some pretty big distances. I think the only other time I'd hit distances that big was the dawn to dusk. That was inside on a stationary bike, where I didn't have to contend with the terrain and going up and down.
Cooler.
And yeah, so certainly a challenge, but I did thoroughly enjoy it, and I will definitely look at doing it again.
Okay, so into September now. So in August I'd ordered my new road bike.
Yeah.
And I put off ordering it because that's the most money I've ever dropped on a bike. And I ordered it, and I think I gave myself just enough time for it to arrive before Brutal. And it did come, I think, the week beforehand, so I got it set up, did a test ride on it, made sure it was all okay, and then we hit Brutal. I think it was the second weekend of September. We drove up to Llanberis, about 5 hours, to North Wales, stayed the night in Carnarvon, and did the race on the Saturday, early Saturday morning.
Yeah, so Brutal was definitely the biggest race I've taken on, and I've taken on some slightly crazy things so far. But it was good to get there, and we did a video which kind of did a bit of a breakdown of how it went, so you can go back and check that out. All in all, that is one of the things that I am most proud of this year, because despite a lot of what I'd been told about my training and my abilities to run throughout the year, for my abilities, I'd smashed it out of the park. So the fact that I completed the run distance of it, and, you know, compared to my skills, I did it in a really good time.
Yeah, I got smashed by the race.
Yeah.
Like I said, again, we don't have many hills.
No.
I was supposed to do 4 laps, which included a big hill and quite a few little ones. And I don't think I sort of struggled. I don't think I struggled to do it. I was just repeatedly spanked, basically. The big hill was not the problem. For a larger rider, I am surprisingly okay on mountains. It was just being worn down by that race. I only did 2 of the 4 laps, which is just under 100k. And looking back at my Strava details and Training Peaks, that was apparently the hardest ride I've ever done, and I've done several rides over 200 kilometers.
Yeah, that. I think that the thing that really kind of hit us with that was, as you said, we don't have mountains around us, and to go and get like the areas where we can train, it's a long drive. So that ends up taking a lot of time out of our weekends, or having to take days off. A lot of driving, then a lot of training, then a lot of driving back. So it becomes a bit of a logistical nightmare, really. So,
and it's something I said. Actually, I've only just sort of discovered it the other day. When I'm feeling good, I can do anything, and because I'm only sort of set 4 or 5 training sessions a week, if I feel bad on one day, I can move an easier session to it, or I can just move it a day along to get the most out of my training. Whereas brutal, the day's the day, it's set. I'm not used to riding when I'm not feeling good, so I think I rode it how I would have done if I was feeling good. And the first lap, I was on target. Like I said, I'm nearly 80 kilograms. And I know I put in a very good time up the mountain on the first lap. I think I was about a minute slower than my coach, who I think holds the full distance record for the bike around that course, because he won that race back in 2019 or 2018, one of those years. And I wanted to beat it because I don't have to do a run, I don't have to do a swim, whatever, whoever's doing whatever.
No.
And I thought that actually doesn't sound too difficult. Look, I based my 200 kilometer training rides around that time, but it is just a proper sapping course, which I think does suit a climber as opposed to a classics puncher, ruler sort of guy. I was like, despite sort of how happy Jess was in completing it, I think I was really upset with my performance there. But I managed to move on quite quickly. I think the next weekend my club had a memorial ride for one of my friends who passed away earlier that year, and I couldn't make the day for some reason, which was on a Saturday. But on the Sunday I got out early and did the 50-mile route in 2 hours something, which again, we don't have many hills around here, so that was one of the factors. But I just went faster throughout the ride. Like I thought, oh, wouldn't it be nice to finish in this time? Wouldn't it be nice to finish in this time, or with this average speed? And instead of being tired, it actually kept going up rather than sort of hanging around the same time. It was constantly increasing and increasing faster in the last quarter of the ride as opposed to the first half. I think that's sort of why I'm a bit disappointed with Brutal, because I had that performance in me to go, but yeah, we move on. There's always next year.
Yeah. So October then kind of saw my month of disappointment as such. So I signed up for the Abingdon Marathon. It's one of our local marathons. And I'm fairly certain it's pegged both the fastest and flattest, or one of the fastest.
It's one of the fastest, one of the flattest. Yeah.
So it's got quite a strict cut-off time, and bearing in mind my last marathon was about 7 hours, I knew it was going to be a challenge. But I'd signed up for this in the earlier part of the year, and Chris, in fact, no one had any idea about this until the envelope came through the door, really, and gave it away. But following on from Brutal, I was destroyed, and it took me a while to get back into running. So I didn't go and do the Abingdon Marathon. This is the second time I've signed up for it and not made it. The first was for injury, and the second because I was done in. But I did start to get back to some sort of regular running, and I did actually go and watch the marathon, and I think that was my first experience cycling in the rain, which scared the living shit out of me, but I do need to get used to it as I inevitably attempt to start and commute more.
Yeah, so October, again, I know I tend to peak around October because I've done, when I used to race a lot more crits and things like that, I would always, the local series was around October, November time, and I just remember being really good. When I first started, when I did my first one, I was really good. I was at the front of the race all the time, found it easy to move around. So I always know I'm sort of on form by October. And I had the Pearson gravel event in London. I probably wouldn't go back because driving down to London is far more stressful than it's worth. But the event was great. The course was a typical UK gravel course. You know, there was a bit of gravel and then there was lots of mud on top of that gravel. Wherever it was, I didn't see much gravel. And it did include having to push the bike up a wet chalk hill with round cobbles on it, which at some points I was wondering why it even came. Looking back on it, it was a really good workout. I think I had some sort of really good training score. That Strava said it was sort of one of my best training days ever. And sort of brought home to me why I, justified buying a gravel bike, because I love those sort of events. And that was actually one of the last times I rode outside. That's the last time I rode the gravel bike outside. I haven't been out this winter because I have semi-slick tyres rather than full knobbly tyres, which I need to look into if I want to ride this winter, because we don't have many gravel paths here. There's a lot of mud. So sort of just being safe. So November has mainly been on Zwift. Done a few rides outside, but like the focus of training has been on Zwift in November.
Yeah, so November ended up being a bit of a quieter month for me. I actually, looking back on it, I did less training. I think I had a lot going on in November, but we did go out for a nice kind of bit of a birthday ride for you, and I got out on the bike a few times and I did get some training done, but generally I did, nearer the end of the year, find myself really slowing down with training. I still kept up the Thursday runs, which was something I restarted with my friend again, so for a bit of accountability, and we go and do a run every Thursday or swap around for another day. But yeah, it started to get a bit quieter, and then
December happened.
Well, yeah.
So December we've mainly been ill.
Yeah.
That's it. I was off work for a week. You were off work for basically a week as well.
Yeah, pretty much.
You were ill before me, and I was like, how have I got away with this? And then it hit me one weekend, and it's like, no, you haven't got away with it.
Yeah.
I mean, I was bad enough. I did a COVID test. Wasn't COVID.
Yeah.
I don't think it was the flu, but it was some sort of infection.
Yeah.
Cold.
Something.
But fortunately, come the end of the year, I think we're both ready for whatever 2023 wants to throw at us.
Yeah.
Within reason.
And I mean, despite kind of being ill over Christmas and everything, we still, Christmas came around and we had a really good Christmas, and then we've both kind of got back onto the training a bit. And yeah, we wrapped up today actually with our final run and ride of the year before we start in the new year. So, I mean, for me overall this year, the big thing was I've gone on plenty more adventures, and I've definitely learned a lot more about myself. And I've also really utilised the time to kind of explore a lot more around my local area. So I'm excited to take a lot of those skills into 2023.
Right. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to next year and what we've got to show you guys next year. I think it's going to be actually our biggest year yet. in terms of content and our own events that we've got going on. So if you don't want to miss them, make sure you subscribe to the channel, click the bell icon. And I really want to say what we got coming up. I'm going to leave it for when it comes out, because it is going to be later in the year. We're going to have some new things on the channel. We're going to switch up the way we do things, but all that is to come in the new year.
I think all we'll say is, if April doesn't kill me, I will be surprised. So keep your eyes peeled on Instagram in case I'm messaging you all from the hospital. Okay?
Anyway, guys, thanks for watching us this year. Hope to see you next year. And from Bikes and Laces, have a happy new year.
Happy New Year. And don't forget to run, ride, live. Bye.